So today we're here with
Randy Bishop, the head basketball coach at Lawrenceville High School.
Randy. Where did you attend high school and where did you graduate?
I went to Paris High School and graduated in 1972, quite a while ago.
Wow, that's a long time ago. What sports did you play in high school?
I ran cross country. I didn't play basketball, amazingly. Started 3 years as a point guard at Crestwood Junior High, but when I got in high school, I was fairly small, so I didn't really play. And probably I regret that. Probably could have. Paris had really good teams back then, but I probably would have got to play. Probably started my senior year. Just chose not to.
Talk about your sports career from your freshman to senior year.
Cross country was a grueling sport. You know, for me, I ran, but after I ran my sophomore year, I developed Osgood slaughter and I had to quit running. But I thought that would probably help my basketball if I decided to play. You have to really like cross country, though. I decided that after my sophomore year, and I developed that I wouldn't run anymore unless I had a ball in my hand. You have to be a special person to run cross country.
Talk about some of your teammates and coaches.
Some of the coaches that I had great respect for in that area, since I didn't play basketball, but Gene Gorley was at Paris. He was a good coach, moved on to Danville, was very successful there. Brett Brown had the 30-0 team there at Paris. One of my best friends, Rick Gosnell, played on that team. Otho Tucker played at Illinois, was there. Brad Farnham was a tremendous player. So those guys were good to be around. I learned a lot about basketball from those guys. Probably one of the better coaches in that area also was Roger Beals at Crispin, who had a phenomenal record and was really a good coach. So just hanging around with those guys, I learned a lot about the game.
Talk about some of the teams and players that you played against in high school.
Well, I didn't play basketball, so I didn't really play against a lot of those guys. However, I probably played as much basketball as anybody in Paris off the court. And we had men's leagues that I played in. I played at Rose Hallman against their freshmen. We played at Indiana State against their freshmen. I traveled around all over the country in Indiana and Illinois playing outside of high school basketball. And in the college, I did that same thing. So I played against some really good players during that time.
What were some of your favorite facilities in high school?
I would say that as a coach, some of the toughest places to play for me to coach in was St. Anthony at the Pit. I love St. Anthony going into that atmosphere. They used to have the junior high kids all set together. They called it the dog pound. And you come out of there and those kids would all be screaming and yelling as the small gym is really packed. And, we played the last game at KZ Westfield. We played that last game at St. Anthony. We were the team to play in there. We were the sacrificial lamb. Had almost every priest in the country there and every former coach and player, but the atmosphere was fun. T-Town was special to me. I played T-Town over the years a lot of times, and playing at T-Town, you have to be there to experience that, to understand it. The first time I played them was in a sectional, and they had the really good team at Winter State, and we played in a very tough game, probably one of the bigger games, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But that atmosphere, when you walked out on the floor and you saw that navy and gold and they were chanting T-Town, 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 it was quite an experience, and I wouldn't trade that for anything because that was special times for me as a coach.
Would there be any other memories in high school that you'd like to share?
Not really. I enjoyed high school. It was good to me. I enjoyed being around the athletics. It was a good time for me. I had good teachers and good coaches to mentor me a lot. I really got a pretty good education there, and I think that was important.
Did you receive any awards in high school?
Nah, not really any big awards that, to speak of.
After high school, where did you attend college?
I went to Eastern. Let me back up. I went to Lakeland Junior College first for 2 years, and then I transferred to Eastern and finished up with a bachelor's in PE, driver ed, and health.
So did you play any sports in college?
No, same thing, just off the court, men's leagues and stuff like that.
Talk about how long have you been the Lawrenceville basketball coach?
This would have been my 8th year.
So now you're retiring, I hear?
I'm retiring as a basketball coach. I'm going to teach another year or two, but as a coach, I'm going to retire.
Talk about your coaching days at Lawrenceville.
It's been good. I came in here from Branson, Missouri, which I had a very successful program out there. And Branson, if you've ever been there, is a unique place. But my kids live in Lawrenceville. I have two daughters, Brooke and Allie, and they started having kids. And my wife pressured me to come back to be around family. And Paul Higginbotham, the principal, had played for me. And he told me they're going to have an opening, and I applied, and I came here. And Lawrenceville's been pretty good to me. We've had a couple of teams when we were really down, but they pretty well let me coach. And I had the really good team here that was an enjoyable year to coach. And I really love those kids. They worked very hard. But Lawrenceville's been a good place to coach.
We'll talk about some of more of your coaching days right now. So talk about some of the best players that you've coached.
Jeff Lorentzen at Martinsville was one of the best guards that I've coached. He averaged 36.6 his senior year. We were 24-5 with him, I think, and then 25-0. And those 2 years were special for me. Like I mentioned, we played T-Town. We upset Casey in the regional. They had Finke that played in Illinois, Miller at 6'7". They had a tremendous team. They were 10 or 11 deep. They'd beaten us 3 times. They were ranked, I think, 4th in the state. T-Town was ranked 2nd, and I think we were like 6th. We upset them in the regional 44-43, and then we played that team with Wiesing and Zarusin and Krager, and ended up losing that game, I think, by 3 points. There were only 3 turnovers in that game, and that was a tremendous game. We were ahead. I thought we were going to win that game with 1 minute and 40 seconds. Ken Crawford called timeout. They trapped our post guy at half court. We got it knocked away from us. They went down and scored. And if we could have seen, we had a wide open guy down the court, and we missed him. But that game was special. That was a nice game. It was a good win, upsetting Casey, but then playing them. And then basically T-Town walked through the state tournament. So that was a fun year.
Talk about when you had seniors like Harry Loeb on your team. What did that team mean to you?
That team's special. They didn't have much size. Played real well together. The chemistry, they were good friends. They'd played together since they were in 3rd grade. Really good team chemistry. They told me, you can't press every game in high school for a whole year, and we did. Those kids pressed. We were 28-3 their senior year, lost to T-Town in that sectional game at Flora, which was a tremendous game. Come down to a turnover or 2 in that game and some missed free throws. But we'd beaten T-Town earlier in the Capital Classic. We really had a nice team, but that was a special team. And that was tough on Harry and Brant. When I came here, we had 4 seniors decided not to play, and those 2 had to play as freshmen, and they got their eye teeth cut real quick. That was tough on them for a year or 2, but panned out in the long run. And, I want to back up real quick just a second on those better players that I coached. John Gross was really good on that 25-0 team. Darren Fay was a nice guard that I had. And at Casey Westfield, I had tremendous players. Drew Custerman, that ended up going to Elon, North Carolina, was a nice player. Both the Thronberg kids, Denny's sons, played for me. DJ was 6'6", 6'7", ended up playing baseball at Parkland. Derek was a tremendous guard for me there at Casey too. And then I had the Hodge twins that played at Olivet. John Williams that played at Olivet. I had some nice players there at Casey also, so I wanted to mention them a little bit too.
As far as what is the reason why you enjoy coaching so much?
Well, I have a passion for the game. I started playing basketball when I was in 3rd grade in a little league there in Paris, and you do a lot of things, but basketball is a special love for me. I don't really ever, people say, well, how do you coach today's kids? It's not really a job for me. It's a passion. It's a love. It gets me out of bed every day. Even when I got older, it would get me out of bed. I look forward to seeing the kids to try to teach them something new that I'd learned about basketball and getting them to enjoy it. So, it's the passion itself. And that'll be the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. When I don't have that passion, I do other things. I hunt and I fish and those kind of things too, but I probably won't be the same. I'll miss the game a little bit.
Who has helped you along the way?
I've had a lot of people. Nellie Bennett, I student taught for him at Marshall. They had tremendous teams then. He had Howie Johnson, who was one of the best players that I'd seen around during that era. And back in Sports Illustrated, Larry Bird had talked to, he was the only guy he couldn't outshoot. And, he was a great influence on me. Dick Parker, a football coach there, I student taught for him too, at Marshall, was a great influence on me. Taught me about professionalism, how to act correctly. how to treat kids, how to coach in a professional manner. He was big into that. And then I had a high school player that I was good friends with. Rick Gosno played at Lakeland. He used to call him the Paris Prince. He was like a small Maravich. Went to Central Missouri State. Was one of the most dedicated players I ever met in my life. And he was a big influence on me. He was a college roommate of mine. He constantly pushed me to get better as a player. Even when I didn't play, he still pushed me, because if you're going to be a coach, he said, you're going to need to know all these things. So he was a big influence. Howard Garrett and Clyde Lovellette. Clyde Lovellette played in the pros. I became friends with him. My dad was sheriff at Paris, and Clyde was sheriff at Terre Haute, Indiana, and I got to know him. And when Clyde came to Lakeland, I got to be friends with him, and Clyde taught me a lot about the game. So he was a big influence on me. I'd been a guard, so he taught me a lot of things about the post moves and the post men. So he was a big influence on me. And he told me never to give up, always work hard, and good things would come. And I believe that. And he was a big influence on me. And my mom and dad, who constantly pushed me to be the best that I could be. And I felt like I tried to do that. And I owe them a lot. They're of course, passed by now, but they were a big influence on me.
We'll get back into coaching here in a second, but as far as some of the officials that you've met along the way that you're coaching, who are some of your favorite ones?
Well, I liked them all. Now, some of them didn't think that, because, I was a highly intense coach, but I think the older coach, it's not the same now. Carl, your dad, was one of my favorite officials. Jim Wagner, Andy Pullen, Jack Scott. I could name all kinds of them, on down the road. And there was a Malnix that I really liked, Mayhood, Schnichter. All those guys were good officials. And, I really developed a pretty good relationship with them, even though sometimes I was hard on them. But I think they all understood that, I might not have a job in 4 months as a coach. They could go to their jobs and keep them and not have the same type of pressure. So they knew, and there was a lot more pressure on coaches, I think, in the 80s and the 90s as far as winning goes. And I think officials kind of understood that, the older ones. And the younger ones now kind of seem to, in my opinion, wear their feelings on the cuff. And if you say anything, they take it as a personal attack. I might get on official, and in a game, I might get on your dad, and probably, I would say, probably 20 minutes later, it's over, and we're still friends. And I think they understood that. But I miss that part of the game, and I miss those guys that were really good officials, because it was fun. Terry Andrews, Ed Garner, Tim Leasty, Steve Culp. I could name all those older guys over the years. When we get to talking about a story or two, I'll tell you a couple of funny ones about officials that I saw over the years that were really funny. So,
talk about as far as some of the officials. So, who are some of the local more officials in this area that you really enjoyed talking to?
Well, Jim Wagner, always appreciated him. I could sit and talk to him about a lot of things. I think his son Jason's going to develop into a pretty nice official. Tim Leasty's always been a favorite player of mine when he played at Lawrenceville, and a good official. I also enjoyed watching him a little bit and talking to him. Terry Andrews is retired now, but I still enjoy talking to him about the game. He was a heck of an official. Ed Garner's retired too, and he's kind of been local. He was Lawrenceville, and I missed having him around talking to him. But those guys were kind of my favorites. I'll tell this story now. Dolan Whitaker at Paris, and he wouldn't mind me telling this, but we were playing in a close ball game with Marshall, and like I said, we'd won 36 games in a row at Martinsville, and we were playing Marshall, and it was for the conference championship, and they inbounded the ball with about 6 seconds left, threw it, and it obviously went off the Marshall kid out of bounds, and Dolan, they called timeout. Dolan gave the ball back to Marshall with 2 seconds, and they threw a lob at the rim, and I never will forget this. The Ross kid, who's the superintendent at Marshall, pushed the kid of mine, Billy Bertram's shoulder down and tipped it at the buzzer, and we got beat. And I started getting after Dolan. He and I had been friends for a long time. And I go, Dolan, you're going to sit down and watch that game film after this, because I want you to see that you blew that call. He said, Bishop, I'll be glad to sit down and watch it with you. So he did, and he saw that he blew the call. They ended up upsetting our streak of 36 in a row and cost the conference championship. So I give him a hard time. Well, at Martinsville, when you went back to shower, there was a hot cold switch that you could throw on the shower. And when he was back there, I threw the cold switch on him and had the door locked. He couldn't get out, and he was freezing to death back there. And I told him, the next time you referee at this gym, I better win. And that's a kind of a funny story that happened. And one other quick one. I had an official that was an older official that was pretty touchy that I watched at Marshall Neoga Championship game at Cumberland. And Cumberland had a woman administrator that was really tough. And the official stopped the game because he got upset because the kids from Neoga were riding him so hard. He walked over and told the principal, I'm not going to ref another minute until you throw those kids out of the game. She walked over there and cleared that whole bench, put them out the exit sign. And then he walked back over and said, you threw out the wrong row. So she ran outside, grabbed all those kids, brought them back in, and threw the other row out. One of the funniest things ever. They stopped the game to do that. So those kind of memories for me, you can't make this stuff up. And I miss those types of things that go on, and probably will in the future too. But officials are a special part of the game. We couldn't do it without them. I admire all of them. I'd never want to do it, to tell you the truth. So,
Talk about the new gym compared to the old gym from Lawrenceville High School.
The old gym in Lawrenceville had a lot of tradition. It's just like Paris. Paris gym had a lot of tradition. And when we left that building, I'd say part of that basketball program got left there. I mean, they moved the pictures, the state pictures, to the new building, which is phenomenal to be in. But that old building was special to a lot of people. And, that thing caught fire and burned. There were a lot of sad people. There were a lot of people touched by that building because for them, there were a lot of good things. When you look at the record, they were 68-0. I don't know if that record will ever be broken. And, Felling was a great coach, and he had great players. You had Marty Simmons, the Scheidlers, all those great players, Rick Leasty, Knopsick. They all came through that building. So I'm glad to be in the new building because it is a nice facility. But those old gyms carry a lot of tradition. And, I know there's a lot of older players that really affects, that you're not playing in the gym anymore.
Describe any obstacles into coaching.
Well, obstacles definitely, and parents is a big obstacle, and probably more so than now than it was. As a coach, you got to understand that they love their kids, and sometimes it gets personal, and you don't want it to be, but it is, and it's an obstacle. Sometimes you have to overlook that a little bit and try to get through that to get the kid to understand it's not a personal attack, that he's not getting to play. It's whether you've earned right to play. I had this philosophy as a coach. I always told them, you're not guaranteed any playing time, but you're guaranteed all the practice time that you want. You have to prove to me, being an older coach, that you were good enough to play. You weren't going to just be given. And that would be my only knock on probably players today and maybe parents, that they play AAU, they spend a lot of money, they take their kid, they travel everywhere, and they kind of feel like they're entitled. If I'm going to pay $5,000 in the summer for my kid to play, he should be playing all the time. And that's been a difficult thing with coaching, especially with me being an older coach. And I don't know other older coaches that have had to deal with that a little bit. I've had a lot of good parents, and I haven't had very many that caused a lot of problems. And every now and then you'll run across some that really, and if you could just get them to understand, I understand it's personal with your kid, but you're destroying the team in the process. And basketball is a team sport. And I think nowadays we've lost a little bit of that. It's become more of an individual sport than what it used to be.
So at what age did you become interested in sports, Randy?
3rd grade. My dad put a basketball in my hand and told me, you're not going to sit in the house, you're going to go outside and play. And, I lived on a farm for 4 or 5 years too. When you're a sheriff, you couldn't be consecutive terms, so you go county clerk. We bought a farm, and my cousins all lived out in that area, so we played ball all the time. We'd play flies and grounders and baseball, pitch constantly, played a lot of basketball and a lot of things. And I've always been a sport guy. I mean, I hunt, I fish. I played table tennis at Eastern with professors all the time. One of my favorite sports was indoor badminton, even competed at that a little bit. And I enjoy all sports, except golf, which kind of surprises people. But golf drove me crazy. I never could master it, so I decided to fish instead.
Since you played and now are obviously been coaching for a while, how has the game changed?
3-point lines changed a lot of it. I think it's kind of encouraged teams to be a little bit more undisciplined. It's taken the discipline part out of the game. But I think a good thing is it's given the smaller teams a chance that you could not have to have a 6'7" center to be able to compete and win. That's changed quite a bit. I think there's more high screen and roll, mostly influenced by the NBA. I think they've lost that truer form of basketball where there are a lot of screens set. The defense has changed quite a bit where everybody's packed in the lane, not out pressuring and pressing as much as they used to. So I think the game has become more physical. I can remember one time at Casey, the Collins boys shooting 35 free throws in a game. That's unheard of now. You're lucky if you're a player who shoots 10. So it's become more physical, I think.
What advice would you give to today's youth about playing sports?
Well, first off, I think kids need to be more dedicated to the sport itself. And I think kids need to play more pickup games on the playground. When I was coming through Paris, as I got to be older in college, there's a place there in Paris, Memorial Grade School, where it's an outdoor court. And on Sunday afternoon in the summers, the court was packed. College players came home. You better get on a good team, or you might set 2.5 hours to get a play. That's how many kids played and how much interest there was. Nowadays, you drive around town, you're lucky if you see an outdoor court. My advice to kids is to get out and play more, to learn more how to play individual moves and play with other kids, and to play on develop other skills besides just standing and shooting at a basket. And AAU has its place, but it also can have a place that's not good. It can teach you bad habits. But I would advise them to do that. Get around successful people that are successful in coaching. I tried to find the coaches that were successful at the college and high school level and tried to absorb all I could from those people as a sponge. I think young players need to do that. Find players that are a positive influence. Why are they winning? What do they do? Why are they successful? And try to mimic what those guys did. When I was young, I used to watch Pete Maravich play on all the time, and then I'd go out and try to mimic those things and learn those things, and now I can pass those things on to kids. Can't do as many of them anymore, but I would advise them to do that. And remember that basketball is a team game, and it's not an individual sport. You have to learn to buy in to the team concept, and the other thing is to be able to take orders from a boss. A coach is a boss. And you might not like all the things he says all the time, but most of the time these coaches have had experience and they know what they're doing. You need to be able to listen and not just form your own opinion and walk away and say, I'm not going to do this. And then develop a passion. Well, I don't care if it's sports. If you like playing the piano, you need to be the best pianist you can be. Develop a passion. Don't be mediocre. Be the best. And I think once you develop passion, that worked for me in coaching.
What has sports in general and also coaching done to change your life?
It changed a lot. It taught me to be more disciplined. It kept me away from alcohol and drugs. And I'm not saying that probably I didn't do some of that along the way, not the drug thing, never did that. We all go to college and you might go through a little bit of that, but sports taught me that discipline to know the difference between making a bad choice and a good choice. And it taught me how to communicate with people, parents. A lot of problems with parents' communication. Did I communicate with them very well? Communication with kids, communication with administrators, school boards. Sports taught me how to communicate with people like that quite a bit. So I think that's important. It taught me how to fail. You can't be afraid to fail as a coach. You're going to lose sometimes. And as a coach, it's serious, it has passion. It's a failure. You learn how to fight through failure. What did I do wrong? What can I correct? It taught me how to deal with disappointment. I lost that game to Flora. We were 25-0, and we ended up getting beat by them. And I blame myself for that because they beat us with a box and won. Chad LaCrone was it all, and he stopped Lorentzen. And I blame myself. I felt like I failed the team and myself by not being prepared for that. I never lost with a box and won again after 87, 88 because I prepared, but that was a big disappointment for me, the community, the kids. But I had to learn to live with that and go on, and sports taught me how to fight through that and be able to do it.
Deep down, you were mentioning a little bit about your role models, but who truly are some of your role models that you would like to say thank you to them?
Well, I think that Howard Garrett, I owe him. He helped me get my first job. He taught me a lot about coaching. Just watched him, being around him quite a bit. Clyde Villett's not here, of course, he's passed away. But if I could go back and talk to those guys now that aren't with me, I'd like to thank him, and I thought he was a big influence on me. My dad's not here either. He was a big influence on me. Modern role models that I have now, I like Kenny Crawford. I thought that he is everything that causes kids to want to win. And he was tough and disciplined, and I think that I owe him because I got tired of losing to T-Town. That's why I went to Branson. I always tell people that. Bishop, why did you leave Casey? You won 20 games 7 years in a row. I said, I got tired of losing to T-Town. And it's because I thought T-Town did things right. They're blue collar, hard workers. Their kids come back to T-Town. And I think Kenny and Fehrenbacher and all those guys were a part of that. And I think that the community itself, and Effingham, St. Anthony, same way. I think they do a lot of things right. And that whole community, Effingham's grown and all that. So those guys that I knew in that area, I owe them because I think they made me better coaches. Steve Bennett was a good friend of mine at Martinsville. He coached there before me. I was around him quite a bit, learned some things from him. All my assistants were good role models to me. I mean, they did things right. They worked hard. They were dedicated. They were loyal. They never backstabbed. So I looked up to those guys too. And Bill Walters, superintendent that I had at Martinsville, I learned about communicating with people from him quite a bit. I had great principals, through the years. Fritz Wheeler was at Oblong. Bill Walters, like I said, superintendent. Nick Grayhouse at Casey, Jim Koss. All the guys I had in Missouri were great administrators. So you got to have them too. And the boards were pretty good that I worked for.
Is there anything else you would like to share, Randy?
Just that basketball has been good to me. And I would encourage any kid that wants to coach to do that because it's become hard now. A lot of people, I should say schools are having trouble finding coaches because of people, they don't want to go through that. But I'm here to tell you the rewards are much better than the things that are the negatives of it. And kids out there today, they need positive role models. They need somebody to push them to want to work hard. They need people to help them develop passion. And that's all I'd want to say. I want to thank everybody that, that's been involved with me over the years, the many players I had. I could have spent a lot of time talking about a lot of the best players that I had at Martinsville. I had a bunch. You think about that. I was there 10 years. We had 2 losing seasons, and one of those got to the regional finals. Casey was tremendous. Great kids there. And we all did that together. The communities, the assistant coaches I had, administrators, boards, they were all good. I got fired at Martinsville, and we were talking about disappointments. I want the kids out there to know, and any other adult that sees this, that, God, one door closes, but God opens another one. And that happened to me. I went to KZ a week later, and look what happened there. I went 7 years there, great years, and then that enabled me to climb onto a big stage at Branson in a 5A school, and that there I could never trade. I mean, how many coaches get to play in front of 15,000 people? And I played against Oak Hill Academy. I played against Memphis White Station, some of the better teams in the nation. So that one disappointment led to a lot of better things. And sometimes we don't understand that. And that's what I want to pass on to people. You always got help there. I've always been a pretty faithful person. I just didn't go out and publicly talk about it. But I think that God had a lot to do with a lot of those things I did. And I want to pass that on. When things look bad, sometimes they'll end up a lot better. And if you're patient and can wait.
Randy, I appreciate your talk. You had great stories, and I really enjoyed that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for doing this. Coaches like me really appreciate the opportunity to share some of that stuff with you. I wish we had another 2 hours.
Thank you, Randy.